What is up? It is Maximus MMA, bringing you my fights to make after UFC OKC. I've let the dust settle a little bit, alright, I had some stuff to do in real life. Also, the card, I didn't really want to recap it too bad. I actually wanted to make this video instead. These fights came to mind immediately after the event, and we'll cover a little bit of what happened at UFC OKC as well, obviously by talking about these fighters and their upcoming fight. So up first, we've got Vinicius Oliveira against Jose Delgado. Look, Jose Delgado, okay, he's 4-1 in the UFC. He just got a big win at UFC OKC over Austin Bashi. I did pick Austin Bashi to win a terrorist decision. Look, thankfully it didn't go that way, okay? Because I really like Jose Delgado. He's put on a lot of good fights. He lost that war to Nathaniel Wood, which Nathaniel Wood's on like a 7-fight win streak or something of that nature. So you can't fault that for being his only loss in UFC. The Bashi win is good. And he's just a guy that brings violence, right? I mean, he had that knee up the middle against Hyder Emil before Hyder Emil was getting knocked out a bunch. And looked, I mean, he used that same knee against Bashi. And I like the chaoticness of Delgado when it needs to be, even though he is a relatively technical striker, against a guy like Vinicius Oliveira, who is absolute chaos. I mean, Lockdog Oliveira is literally the most chaotic fighter in the entire UFC, likely. He just brings a certain level of chaos with him. I mean, even against Andre Fili in a fight he won by KO, Delgado by a close decision. Right, Vinicius Oliveira was hurt bad to the body, I believe, in the second round, and it was hilarious. Like he's like wincing, and he starts yelling. He goes, "Ah!" It was so funny, man. It's like just you always know it's gonna be entertaining when Vinicius Oliveira gets in there. Obviously, he had that knockout of the year against Bernardo Sopai, I believe in his UFC debut, and I'll never forget seeing that live. I was already working at a car dealership at the time at a slow end of the day, and man, was that a good choice. So this is a fight that has to be made. I think that these guys are both hovering around 20 or 30 in the rankings, so it just makes sense, right? And Oliveira recently got a step up against Mario Batista, but he was really outclassed. And Mario Batista obviously just beat Corey Sandhagen. He's on an absolute roll, right? And he's one of the most technical guys in the entire division. So okay, Oliveira, right? We've shown that it's going to be hard for your style to beat those level of guys. Let's give you one more in the 20 to 30 range, and whoever wins this fight is set up for a huge breakthrough into the top 15 to 10 range at the beginning of next year. To me, it makes too much sense. Both these guys are in their primes. It would be an absolutely great fight. Next up, I've got Axel Sola and Ismail Bonfim. The winner taking on Chase Hooper. Chase Hooper got a win at UFC OKC. And look, Chase Hooper is like, he's going to end up maybe being like a 30-something-year-old prospect. But at this point, he's still young. He's shown that when he jumps up the ranks against these high, decent strikers, not even super high level, just guys that are violent and have power, he's going to get knocked out. So I don't know if his UFC contract is already too big. He's had a lot of fights. He might be getting a lot of money. Maybe the UFC is not willing to try to build him again. I think that eventually he's got to get thrown to the wolves, but I think you give him one more fight lower in the ranks. Winner of this fight going down on Saturday. Ismail Bonfim is a guy Chase Hooper should really beat. I mean, Ismail Bonfim is probably being cut from the UFC, assuming he loses this weekend. And Axel Sola is a very good fighter who, honestly, I would probably pick against Chase Hooper, but I just think it's an appropriate level matchup. Axel Sola, I think the UFC is doing him a favor with this matchup because he took the Mason Jones fight. Nobody wants to fight Mason Jones. And look, nobody in the UFC probably can outdog Mason Jones in his current form, just straight dogfight. But Axel Sola really tried, man. And against a guy like Bonfim, who's shown to have a lot of quit in him, you definitely got to lean towards Sola. But either way, I just think that these two matchups are good for Chase Hooper and timeline. I think Chase Hooper's got to fight again quick. I mean, you sub Mitch Ramirez in, a couple minutes, right? It was what he was supposed to do. It's what he did. I think he needs a quick turnaround. So hopefully we can get a definitive winner in this fight who can also make a quick turnaround right at the end of the year. And then up next we've got John Paul Labosiani against Carlos Leal. This fight is honestly awesome when you think about it. Two guys that, look, welterweight is absolutely stacked. So it's hard to even break into the top 15. Carlos Leal is probably ranked like in the 20s to 30s, right? Low 30s. Lobosiani just got a really big win at UFC OKC against Seok Ko, and he really had nice kicks in that fight and showed to be very good on the ground, which were both things that I expected going in. But he, I don't want to say he completely outdogged Seok Ko because Ko was definitely there, but he just looked a little bit more technical, a little bit fresher as the fight went on, and just super crafty. And clearly, he's a guy the UFC wants to push. He was being featured in a lot of their embeddeds and things of that nature. And I mean, Lobosiani, I'd like to see him maybe in the grappling against a guy like Leal, who's really strong for the weight class. Obviously, Leal had popped for steroids, I believe, many moons ago. But even since then, he's gotten good wins in UFC. And yeah, I just think this fight makes a lot of sense. Leal just beat Chidi and Joe Kiani, and it's just a fight that let's keep these guys going. And I think it's good for both as far as name recognition because Jean Paul certainly is somebody now, and Carlos Leal, right? Real UFC fans, they know who Carlos Leal is, right? He puts on good fights, and I think whoever gets this win, could shoot up the rankings, the beginning to middle of next year. Up next, we've got Christian Leroy Duncan taking on Joe Pyfer. Look, this fight makes a lot of sense from the rankings. Okay, these guys are both in like the 5 to 10 range, hovering, right at about 10, more so than 5, I guess. But point is, this fight would be very entertaining, and I think that Christian Leroy Duncan should take a fight like this. Obviously, he just beat Jared Cannonier, right? But he should have finished Jared Cannonier, in my opinion. And he also should have finished Roman Dolidze because Dolidze looked so slow going into that fight and during the fight, and CLD couldn't get him out of there. Same thing with Jared. Like, look, Jared's an absolute warrior. I mean, he's the killer gorilla for a reason, but he's a 42-year-old killer gorilla. I don't know, man. It's just hard to think, like, man, he really couldn't finish him. Even though Jared Cannonier is obviously no slouch, but I just think that the UFC's got to be done giving CLD these super favorable matchups. Let's put him in there against a hard hitter, an American, who's going to come forward, has a little bit of grappling, and really here I think a lot of the fight might be won in the clinch. I mean, Joe Pyfer is nasty in the clinch, but so is CLD. I mean, if you watch the Jared Cannonier fight, and obviously his whole career too, he just does a great job of grabbing the arms when you show up against the cage, throw elbows on the clinch, spinning attacks out on the break. It's a fight that would be very interesting. On the feed, it would be very interesting as well. I mean, a CLD finally going to land another one of these spinning kicks and spinning elbows and back fists, which he's done his entire career. But Joe Pyfer is a guy who I think would throw in combination in response to these spinning attacks, which could create for a highlight reel knockout. I think that a highlight reel knockout for either of these guys could end up getting them one fight away from a title shot. So this fight just makes sense. To my knowledge, Joe Pyfer does not have a fight booked. So make this turnaround quick for CLD. You didn't take much damage against Jared Cannonier, and let's get it going. Like these guys are in their prime, and again, the momentum in these weight divisions, middleweight and welterweight, is so important in order to get a title shot. And that's going to bring us to our last fight that needs to be made here, with Dricus du Plessis having an outstanding performance against Kamaru Usman. Look, Dricus du Plessis looked extremely quick. He looked extremely big in there. I mean, his frame is huge. And yes, Kamaru Usman was coming up in weight, but Dricus is so fast and powerful for how big he is, and his awkwardness plays into that. Just his willingness to go, right? That's what I love about Dricus. And I've got him preferably matched up against Brendan Allen here. But first, let me talk about Amavov. Look, Amavov's been waiting in the wings, right, for a while. He's been waiting, I think, since September. He beat Kyle Baraujo in France, I believe it was, and in a main event. And yeah, man, I thought he was gonna get a title shot after that, but he still hasn't gotten it. And since then, Chimaev is lost, and Strickland got the belt, and that's a good rematch, right? I'd really like to see that. I think it'd be funny. Strickland would obviously say funny things, and Mavov's he's got beef with that whole team. I know he was yelling at Strickland, I believe, at the Chris Curtis fight because Strickland was in his corner. So it's definitely a bad blood matchup. I think it should be made. Plus, I'm gonna put y'all on here. the Nasruddin Amavov walkout song. Okay, it's called Tomorrow by Sadio, right? Check it out if you want to. But just know whenever he fights next, you'll remember this and you'll be like, damn, that song is fire. So yeah, I really think that Amavov should get the Strickland fight, but if he doesn't, which is almost looking like he might not, although a Strickland announcement's got to be coming soon, I think you give Amavov to Dricus and or Brendan Allen. Now I think it's more likely to be Brendan Allen, but this fight stylistically makes so much sense. Brendan Allen is very come forward, aggressive guy. He's got a little bit of grappling, extremely well rounded. Like to me, like the Brendan Allen skill set is like he's like Mario, right? He's just really like all arounder. He's not like great at anything except his toughness, right? He's pretty tough. So I like that against a guy like Dricus, who was obviously extremely tough, and they're just gonna exchange well in the pocket. I think this is a fight where it'd be very interesting to see who's gonna back down. We saw Brendan Allen use a lot of kind of walk down tactics against Edmund Shabazian, who was willing to give up ground. I don't think Dricus is going to be willing to give up ground, and if he does, Dricus is going to be throwing those blitzing just straights down the pipe as he almost runs into the punch, followed by hooks to the body and potential high kicks. So it just seems like a fight that could produce some really good moments. Although if this fight does happen, I think that you make it 5 rounds. It could be a feature fight on a numbered event, but I'd almost prefer this fight to be like I mean, Brendan Allen is the king. He's one of the kings of the Apex, right? And we just saw Dricus get a victory in a main event, obviously. So I think Dricus, at this point of his career, until he loses again, is a 5 round fighter. I think you put him in there for 5 rounds with Brendan Allen in the Apex. Give me the Apex. Come on now. No, this fight should be in front of a crowd, but give me some kind of fight night, I think, because 5 rounds seems like a necessity. But yeah, really hope you enjoyed all of the fights that I laid out here. Look, all these guys are in their prime. Let's get them made. There's no reason to wait, UFC. I understand the UFC is probably right using AI to make the fights and stuff like that, which is why we get some of the disgusting matchups we do. But at the end of the day, I think these fights are really good for the sport and would all produce really good results. I will be breaking down the entire upcoming UFC card where Magomed Ankalaev is taking on Bogdan Guskov out in Abu Dhabi. Another morning time card, which is always nice. So yeah, really looking forward to that. If you did like any of these fights, let me know below in the comments, and please like, comment, subscribe. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.